They must think the American people have no common sense. How anyone could buy that kind of explanation, just staggers the imagination. Once again, we have walked through the looking glass with Donald Trump and his loyalists. We have walked into a world where down is up, where war is peace, where falsehood is truth. I can only compare it to Alice's going through the looking glass, or maybe if you're a devotee of old Superman comics, the Superman bizarro world where everything is upside down. I'll explain what I mean.
Okay, explain then.
What happened to Mike Waltz, Sam?
He's out of there. He's no longer the National Security Advisor. He's been moved to the UN ambassadorship.
Yes. And not only is he out,
right,
a bunch of other national security staffers are out.
Get him out of there.
And let me remind you what Waltz did, right? Number one, he communicated sensitive national security information. They claim it isn't war plans or isn't classified. If you believe that, man, as you know, I got this big bridge waiting to sell you. In what universe is revealing the weapons to be used, the target, and the timing of the attack not a war plan, not sensitive classified information?
To be clear, I believe Waltz was the one who set up the signal chat, and Hegseth was the one who actually posted or sent the war plans.
Absolutely. But what did Waltz do? Not only on a signal chat where they said, do not put any classified information on that chat, right? They were warned.
Oh, they were? I didn't know that.
Yes, you don't do that because it's encrypted, but who can easily penetrate those encryptions, Sam? Who has the capacity?
Myanmar.
Yes, exactly. They probably do, actually. Yeah. Probably almost any nation can do it, much less China and Russia. And it was Waltz who was so incompetent that he inadvertently put an Atlantic reporter.
No. To quote him, the Atlantic reporter was sucked into his phone. That's what he said.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they give us as I said, bizarro world, looking glass world. They give us the most crazy, the most insane. They must think the American people have no common sense. How anyone could buy that kind of explanation, just staggers the imagination. And, he attacked the reporter, right?
Right.
As if the reporter was to blame, as you say. Somehow the reporter did this, even though it was Waltz,
right,
who put the reporter on the signal chat and never should have set up a signal chat in the first place. It's not just one error. It's compound errors that luckily did not cost American lives. He should have been bowing down to that reporter for not releasing that information that was so irresponsibly put on a signal chat instead of attacking and disparaging him. So Waltz is out. Only one national security advisor, as far as I know. I hate to prove a negative, but as far as I know, only one national security advisor under one president has been out more quickly. Do you know who that was and who the president was?
The president was Trump, one, and I think it was Michael Flynn.
Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
Exactly. Who pleaded guilty later of lying to the FBI, but was pardoned by Donald Trump. So he didn't break his own record, but he certainly came close. And you had a complete revolving door of national security advisors. I think there were 4 of them under Trump, and at least a couple of them, including John Bolton, a staunch conservative with, very strong credentials in foreign policy. I don't agree with much that John Bolton stands for, but he's no lunatic left-winger. He is a hardcore right-winger, and he has blasted Trump, both for his incompetence and for the fact that he poses a clear and present danger to our national security and our democracy. Could not be more blatant. But enter J.D. Vance.
What a loser.
Yeah. The only thing you can say about Vance is he says incredible, ridiculous things slickly with a straight face, as if he's really telling you something. And he has claimed that, oh no, Waltz was not pushed out for this incredibly dangerous, incredibly incompetent act. He was promoted.
No.
Yes, he was promoted.
What?
Yes,
He said
was
that?
promoted. This is what he said.
Yeah, right.
Promoted to the UN ambassador, a Senate-confirmed position. What does Trump think of the UN?
He doesn't like it.
Not much. It's one of those, international organizations that he despises. In fact, do you know who he had first appointed to the UN ambassadorship?
Nikki Haley?
It's close. Ellie Stefanik, a member of Congress.
Oh, Nikki Haley last time.
Yeah. And then he pulled her, removed her because he wanted her back in Congress. One seat in Congress was more important to Trump than this so-called glorious UN ambassadorship.
Vance actually said that. He said, he got a promotion.
Got a promotion.
Who's going to, after all this fiasco,
Yes.
they move Mike Waltz and they claim it's a promotion. I mean, give me a break.
Well, this is the same guy who still claims he won the 2020
Right. Good point.
election.
Good point.
Let's not forget, or that everyone wanted Roe versus Wade overturned. You can go, and you just had an amazing thing come out from, I think it's Pam Bondi, who I had warned about before she was appointed. She claimed that the fentanyl seizures at the border saved 258 million American lives. That's almost the entire adult population. 258 million lives.
Aren't there like 300
We have
million
330
people?
some odd people in
Yeah.
the country, yeah.
Where's she getting that math from?
It's the same kind of crazy math that Trump used to justify his tariffs. And of course they claimed Obama and Biden were just letting fentanyl rush across the country. By her logic, 258 million Americans should have died from fentanyl-related illnesses under Trump, under Biden and Obama. And of course, it was a minuscule fraction.
But there is a massive fentanyl problem in the United States.
And absolutely. But that doesn't mean you lie about it. Doesn't
Sure.
mean you make things up that are incredible on their face.
Right.
I find it actually easier to believe that Waltz got a promotion than I could believe in their first 100 days they saved 250 million American lives.
Oh, and this week Trump said that the economy is Biden's fault.
Of course it's
Right.
I'm surprised he didn't say it was Obama's fault or
Right.
Franklin Roosevelt's fault. Anybody but me.
Hillary Clinton's fault.
Hillary Clinton's fault. And anyone's fault but me. I have nothing to do with the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all Biden. Meanwhile, of course, the economy was booming under Biden. Under Trump, not only did it slam on the brakes, but it went backwards. Economy lost growth under Trump, whereas it was booming under Biden.
I saw a chart that showed the day of his announcements or the day of his tariff fiascos, and you could see the exact correlation between his words, his actions, and the stock market crashing.
Yeah. So now it's not just the stock market crash, it's the whole economy.
Right. Which
impacts all of these ordinary folks, particularly, the less college educated who have, minimal incomes, who voted for him. They are the ones hit hardest, not the rich people who invest in the stock market.
It's interesting because on his 100-day parade or whatever he did speech, he had this banner behind him that said jobs, jobs, jobs. And he's probably fired more people as president than any president in the history of the United States.
And guess what happened to federal spending under his watch while he's firing all these people? Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah, it's going up even though he's claiming he's saving all this money.
Yeah, you've heard me explain many times what Musk is doing doesn't save any money, in fact, may cost the government money. You're losing valuable workers who are important for the economy. You fire people, they're not spending money. They're not paying taxes. They're collecting unemployment compensation. You fire IRS people, you lose hundreds of billions of dollars in uncollected taxes from Trump's very rich friends. And the frightening thing now, you know, they wanted to save in this budget, and I don't know if it'll ever get out of Congress, $150 billion, not million, $150 billion. And as every independent analyst has pointed out, and as we've stressed on this show, what do you have to cut to save $150 billion? Given that they're not cutting defense, they're raising defense, and you can't do anything about the debt service. What's left in terms of big ticket?
Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security.
Exactly. And now, apparently on the horizon are deep Medicaid cuts. Why go after Medicaid and not Medicare and Social Security? Because old people vote, right?
Right.
You're not going to cut benefits first for old people. You're going to cut it for the poor and the near poor, who have less political clout, but who are most vulnerable in our society. That's their MO. Go after the most vulnerable people you possibly can. Tens of millions of less affluent Americans depend upon Medicaid. And how popular are these Medicaid cuts, Sam?
Not.
More than 3/4 of the American people oppose them. A majority of Republicans oppose them. This is not something that the American people are demanding. It's something that the American people are deeply, dramatically opposed to for good reason. Why in the world would you want to deprive people of medical care? And by the way, you think you're going to save money on that?
No.
No, they're going to have to get medical care one way or another.
One way or another.
And they're going to be flooding into emergency rooms, right?
Hold the mic a little higher.
They're going to be flooding into emergency rooms, which is vastly more costly than what is being covered on Medicaid, which is an efficient, cost-effective program. How much fraud have they documented in the Medicaid program?
I assume none.
None. In fact, they really haven't documented more than a minuscule amount of fraud anywhere in the government. They just say there's fraud and waste, just like they say, you know, illegal immigrants are voting, and, you know, there's no evidence, and all the evidence is contrary to what they are claiming here. It would be, you know, a humanitarian, political, medical, budgetary disaster, as well as, you know, human cruelty to cut Medicaid. They don't seem to care about cruelty. You know, they don't seem to care about firing people who are doing their jobs well, who might have disabled children and are struggling to meet their medical bills, struggling to put food on their table, struggling to get housing. They don't care.
Can I ask you a question? Back
Yes.
to Waltz.
Yes.
One, Rubio has now replaced Waltz.
Yes.
Right. So now he's what? He's got like 8. Rubio's got 8 jobs.
Yes, I'll explain that.
And I'm wondering, do you think there's any chance Waltz doesn't get confirmed?
Oh, I think there's an excellent chance
Really?
Walt doesn't get confirmed.
Interesting.
It's a real test. I'm going to talk about confirmation in a moment. But Marco Rubio, remember what Trump called him in derision back in 2016?
Of course, Little Marco.
Little Marco is now great, big, giant Marco.
With 8,000 jobs.
Yes, it reminds me of the great Gilbert and Sullivan play, The Mikado, when there was an official who they call the Lord High Everything Else, that he has all of these positions. And of course, it's a big joke and it's satirical. But now Marco Rubio, Little Marco, is Lord High Everything Else. Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, head of USAID, and even head of the National Archives.
What?
Yes, of all crazy things. No way you can do those 4 jobs. Now, why is he relying on Rubio, Sam? There's one good reason. He's the one damn person in the cabinet who has some credentials and some real standing on Capitol Hill. A long-term senator, a fairly well-respected senator, well-liked, as opposed to all these other unqualified crazy people like Pete Hegseth and RFK Jr. and Linda McMahon. I can go on that he's populated with his appointments. Rubio's the safest guy he has. That's why he's made him Lord High everything else. But I think Waltz is not going to just sail through.